We rejoin Ash and Brock on board a ship bound for Slateport City. Several days have passed since receiving the call from Flannery, yet still Ash can barely sit still, so eager is he to have his rematch with Mr. Moore. Thankfully our young hero has a perfect outlet for this excess energy, that being training, as with the knowledge that this will be his toughest battle yet, he and his Pokemon devote every spare moment they have to training. And it is good that they do, as once they arrive at Slateport, there are not many spare moments to be had, with Ash and Brock departing at top speed, since if they want to make it to Lavridge and back in time for the league, they will need to make excellent time. Fortunately, having traversed this part of Hoenn before, Brock is able to pathfind with greater proficiency, though even still when they finally arrive in Lavridge Town, Brock estimates that they will need to be back on the road tonight if they want to make it to the Evergrande Conference, meaning Ash will only get one shot at the Heat Badge. However, instead of being worried, this revelation only fires Ash up, as he declares that he works best under pressure, striding confidently towards the gym where Moore and Flannery await him. Being aware of this time limit, Mr. Moore offers Ash a shortened gym battle, suggesting a 1v1 against him and Typhlosion. Though grinning widely, Ash flatly refuses, saying if he's going to take part in the league, he wants to have earned his place there, meaning he wants the same terms as last time, 3v3. Nodding his understanding, Moore takes his place on the gym leader's end of the battlefield, and not wanting to waste any of Ash's time, brings out his Typhlosion. In an inversion of last time, Ash opens this battle with Skarmory, though unlike last time, when the armor bird and its trainer lock eyes, it is with a shared look of determination. Taking the first move, Ash's Skarmory use agility, remembering the blistering speed with which Typhlosion attacks, and so cawing proudly, Skarmory takes to the air, dashing around to up its own speed. Nodding approvingly, Mr. Moore comments that he can see Ash has not only been training, but has gained a greater understanding of his Pokemon as individuals. Well done. However, because he respects the effort the young man has put in, he won't disrespect him with anything less than his best. To this end, he has Typhlosion launch a torrent of flamethrowers, which the Steel type has to push itself to avoid. Feeling that this means Skarmory has now gained enough speed, Ash and his friends zero in on the fiery Stoat with Peck, and to his delight, this lands. Unfortunately, this puts Skarmory in the same position that led to its defeat last time, as it needs to turn its back on its opponent in order to circle round for another attack. Like last time, Typhlosion capitalizes on this, firing off a close-range flamethrower, but thanks to the bond Ash and Skarmory have developed, when Ash cries out, Skarmory puts its trust in its trainer and performs a barrel roll, avoiding the super effective hit and doubling back for a surprise Steel Wing. This sudden return catches both Typhlosion and Moore off guard, and seeing an opening, Ash's Skarmory use Peck as well, before flying directly upwards. After such a volley of hits, the Fire Weasel is looking a bit worse for wear, and as its eyes track the Steel Flying type, it and its trainer know what this is. Grinning with the exuberance of a man 30 years his junior, Old Man Moore then orders Typhlosion to use Flame Wheel, and to Ash's shock, instead of running, the Volcano Pokemon shoots into the air, transforming itself into a fireball and using that to fly. Knowing how damaging this will be, Ash sees only one option, and so gritting his teeth, tells Skarmory to meet it head-on with Peck. Calling its understanding, Skarmory takes off at maximum velocity towards the fireball, and as the two Pokemon clash, the ensuing force is enough to shake the gym. Then as one, the pair of battlers touch down on opposite sides of the gym, both still on their feet, though for how much longer is unclear. In that moment, no one speaks. Then with a soft sooty cough, Typhlosion keels over, giving the win to Skarmory. However, this victory is not without cost, as after a moment to preen and squawk its superiority over its fiery predator, the armor bird follows suit and collapses, bringing the match to a 2v2. Having thought long and hard about who he wants as his second Pokemon, Ash has no hesitation as he brings forth Phanpy, while across from him, Moore is at last forced to reveal the second member of his Elite Four team, with that being Camerupt. Recognizing how small his baby elephant looks in comparison to the volcanic camel, Ash opens this match similarly to the last one, calling for a defense curl in the hope that it'll help Phanpy withstand a few additional hits. And it is fortunate that he does, as seeing the same apparent power disparity, Mr. Moore has Camerupt use Takedown right out of the gate, hoping to eliminate the ground type before it can land any super effective moves. Charging in, Camerupt slams its nearly 500-pound body into Phanpy, and as expected, the effect is devastating, with Phanpy having to turn its fall into a roll so it doesn't go crashing into the battlefield wall. Coming to a stop in front of Ash, the powder blue Pachyderm then begins stamping its little feet, with this causing a series of earthquakes to rock the arena, much to Camerupt's discomfort. Hoping to put a stop to this, Camerupt retaliates with Eruption, stamping its own feet and causing plumes of lava to shoot up from the ground with the geysers forming a line headed directly for Phanpy. Crying out, Ash's little friend used Rollout to escape, and while it does give the long-nosed Pokemon the speed it needs to get away from this attack, it comes at the cost of locking it into this move. And so it is that Phanpy has no choice but to rush in, slamming itself into Camerupt, then bouncing off and trying again. However, on the second attempt, it is met with a takedown, the force of which completely negates the rollout and sends Phanpy soaring backwards. Nonetheless, the little ground type tries again a moment later, and just like the prior attempt, this is cancelled out by takedown, with Phanpy taking all of the damage from the exchange. Wisely, Moore comments that this is the problem with repeating moves. If the opponent can find a workaround, then one is trapped and at their mercy. Sadly, this is proven right as the fourth rollout is overcome by a takedown a moment later, with Phanpy looking to be on the verge of fainting, though when Mr. Moore instructs his old friend to put the little elephant out of its misery, something miraculous happens. Phanpy starts to evolve. In a flash of light, Phanpy, or rather Donphan, suddenly finds itself 3 times larger than it was before, and as Camerupt charges at it, it meets the hit head-on with rollout, then even more astoundingly breaks through the counter, and sends Camerupt flying into the air. A moment later, the eruption Pokemon lands hard on its back, and as Donphan lets out a triumphant bellow, Flannery declares her grandpa's Pokemon unable to battle. Last up for Mr. Moore is his Magmar. With the Spitfire Pokemon living up to its name, as with a huff, it spits a small gout of flame, which Donphan has to dodge. Knowing from previous experience that Magmar is weak to both rock and ground moves, Ash feels confident that Donphan will be more than a match for the Fire type. Unfortunately, even with the power of evolution on its side, Donphan struggles to keep up with Magmar, as the Fire Duck is able to lay down quite literal suppressive fire which forces the armor Pokemon to the back foot. With this disadvantage, it is only a matter of time before Ash and Donphan make a mistake, and in high-level battles such as this, one mistake can be all it takes to knock a Pokemon out. Thanking Donphan for its help, Ash recalls the defeated ground type, before bringing out his last Pokemon, which to the surprise of the gym leader is Muck. Shrewdly, Moore comments that this is a very intentional choice, since up until now, Ash has been using the same team he did in their first battle, but for some reason, he chose to swap out his last member, and more importantly, the one with the type advantage, for something that cannot hit for super effective damage. What's he planning? Grinning, Ash replies that there's nothing particularly complex, though instead of explaining, it'll be easier to show Mr. Moore, as he orders Muck to give Magmar a hug. Rumbling happily, the pile of toxic waste then begins advancing on the Spitfire Pokemon, and though Moore has Magmar use Flamethrower and even Fire Blast to try and drive the poison type away, its liquid body absorbs the worst of these moves, allowing Muck to finally close in and completely encase its foe in its embrace. Now Magmar cannot even produce Fire type moves, and as Mr. Moore watches this, he grins that he understands now. Ash's strategy to smother Magmar's flames. Very clever, since even with all the power in the world, a fire cannot exist without oxygen. Unfortunately, it seems that fire-type Pokemon operate under similar rules, or perhaps it is just that it is difficult to breathe while in one of Muck's hugs, as a moment later, the fiery duck slides out of Muck's grasp, its body limp and its eyes spirals, signifying the end of the battle. And just like that, Ash has won his 8th and final gym badge, qualifying him for the Hoenn League. Meeting him in the middle of the field, Mr. Moore congratulates the young man on this achievement, while Ash thanks the retired elite for such a great challenge. Smiling, Moore hands him the Heat Badge, telling him it was his absolute pleasure, for urging him not to forget all he has learned now that he has met the Evergrande Conference. However, here Brock cuts in, pointing out that he hasn't made it just yet, and unless they get going, they won't make it at all. Yelping at this thought, Ash then proceeds to bolt off with Pikachu at his heels, and after bidding goodbye to Flannery and her grandfather, Brock does likewise, hoping they'll make it in time. Luckily, they do make it, though only by the skin of their teeth, clambering aboard the ferry to Evergrande City just as it's making its last call. Letting out a sigh, Brock groans that he can't remember the last time they sprinted like this, though in contrast, Ash is full of life, cheering they really did it. Next stop, Hoenn League. Recognizing that exuberance, a familiar voice then speaks up behind the pair, commenting that he thought he spotted Ash running up the gangplank. Turning around, Ash sees none other than Tyson, with the brown-haired young man extending a hand to shake, as he asks if this means Ash earned 8 badges as well. Nodding, Ash flashes his badge case, with Tyson doing likewise, as he comments that it looks like they're rivals from here on in. However, with a laugh, Ash replies that in his mind they've always been rivals, and that Tyson is one of the people he's been training so hard to beat. Matching this grin, Tyson says in that case, he'll do his best not to disappoint, while Ash urges him not to lose until they can meet in the finals, a promise the older boy claims he'll hold Ash to as well. Though as it turns out, before the pair can face off against each other, they must first team up, as unbeknownst to them, Team Rocket are currently tailing the ferry in their hot air balloon, scheming about how all the trainers on the boat have earned 8 badges, meaning each and every one of their Pokemon must be of the highest level. As a result, their avarice cannot resist attempting to steal the lot, with the villainous trio dropping down and beginning to recite their motto. That is until a trainer's mischievous attempts to blast them with a Psybeam, a fact which incenses Jessie, as she snaps that it's not polite to interrupt people. However, here it seems the trio have bigger problems than a simple discourtesy, as they now realize that since the passengers of this vessel are all league caliber trainers, they are both willing to, and capable of, summarily trouncing a group of incompetent thieves. Nonetheless, if they knew when to quit, they would not be Team Rocket, and so with looks of determination, Jessie and James bring out Cacnea and Gulpin, only for the grass type to turn its back on the battle and painfully hug James, while the little poison type attempts to slink off in search of a snack. However, after a bit of coaxing, Noticing, the pair do manage to get their Pokemon to battle for them, confidently ordering the trainers to step right up, since they'll beat all of them and take their Pokemon. Unfortunately for them, Ash and Tyson are more than happy to accept this offer, emerging from the crowd and having their Pikachu and Meowth use a joint Thunderbolt that sends Team Rocket blasting off again. After this, the rest of the trip is peaceful, with the ship arriving in Evergrande City a few days later. During this time, Ash and Tyson have grown much closer, sparring several times and finding their abilities to be comparable. Though when Ash offers Tyson to come with him and Brock to registration, Tyson is forced to decline, revealing that as a torch runner, he needs to be at his post. Grinning fondly, Ash and Brock both recall their own experience with the League torch. Then bidding Tyson good luck, they go their separate ways. From here, the events of the Hoenn League preliminaries go as canon, with Ash's Pikachu still beating Gilbert's Hitmonlee to get him through the qualifying round, while Tyson likewise beats Vivica and her Persian, resulting in Ash and Brock learning the backstory of Tyson's Meowth. However, the first major change comes when Ash's match with Dominic in the double battle stage, as while in canon Ash used Torkoal and Corphish, here he has neither of those Pokemon, meaning he has to use alternate choices. Fortunately, with his full roster at his disposal, Ash has no shortage of options, having knocked down Armaldo step up and take down his opponent's Swalot and Tropius, with Armaldo's poison resistance allowing it to hold its own against Swalot, while Noctowl capitalizes on Tropius' flying weakness to defeat it easily, before joining Armaldo in eliminating the poison bag Pokemon. Ash's subsequent match against Clark the Conductor is even easier, as all of Ash's Pokemon have experienced training against a Charizard thanks to the 2 weeks following Ash's initial loss to Mr. Moore, and most if not all have done some training with Quilava, meaning that when Clark unveils his choices, Ash's Pokemon have nothing to fear. In this case, Ash's chosen Pokemon are the proven duo of Meganium and Grovyle, and while Clark snobbishly declares that this will be a symphonic destruction, as his fire types will incinerate the boy's grass Pokemon, Grovyle and Meganium beg to differ, with the power of love and the desire to score a win for Ash respectively, allowing the duo to come together and draw the curtains on the Conductor's pair before they have even finished the overture. This brings Ash to the top 32, where like in canon, he is slated to face Katie, the young woman whose mischievous challenged Team Rocket on the boat. From what Brock tells him the night before the match, Katie earned the nickname Cool Beauty for her analytical ability in battling finesse, causing our young hero to take extra special care when planning his team for their battle. The next morning, Ash and Katie meet in the main stadium for their match, where they are informed of the rules. This will be a full battle, with the battlefield terrain being chosen randomly from rock, ice, grasslands, and water, though once 3 of one trainer's Pokemon are deemed unable to battle, the battlefield will change as well. Nodding their understanding, Ash and Katie then watch as their battlefield reveals itself, being rock, and without further ado, bring out their first Pokemon. For Katie, this is Venomoth, while Ash picks Quilava, though upon seeing the fire type, Katie recalls her Pokemon, replacing it with her Golduck. While it would be smart for Ash to do likewise considering the type disadvantage, this sort of battling has never been Ash's style, as he instead has his Lava Weasel charging with Quick Attack, its speed impressing Katie when it manages to slam its body into her Pokemon before she can even issue a command. However, when she does issue one, Ash quickly comes to realize just how she earned her reputation as a strategist, with Golduck using a point-blank Hydro Pump that douses Quilava, while simultaneously sending it smashing through several rocky outcrops. All this is too much for the Volcano Pokemon to handle, meaning that when it comes to a stop at Ash's feet, it is with Spirals for eyes, signifying the first loss of the battle. Next up for Ash is Grovyle, with the Woodgecko giving its avian foe a cool look, though just like last time, upon seeing that her Pokemon is at a type disadvantage, she switches out for a Scizor. From the stands, Brock implores Ash to switch too, since not only does Scizor resist grass moves, but it quad resists them, meaning that all he'll achieve by keeping Grovyle in is ensure Katie gets another easy knockout. However, based on the look in Ash's eyes, he disagrees, telling Grovyle to rush in and use Leaf Blade. At once the leaves on the grass type's arms glow and change shape into green scythe blades, though when Grovyle slashes them against Scizor's metallic hide, the steel bug doesn't even seem to notice. It then retaliates with a fearsome metal claw. Using its superior speed, Grovyle manages to leap away at the last moment, avoiding the attack and eyeing Scizor up as if daring it to do better. Falling for this taunt, Scizor rushes in this time, though like before Grovyle is faster, kicking off a rock and slamming headfirst into the Pinsir Pokemon with Quick Attack. Unfortunately, while Scizor does not quad resist this move, it does still resist it, meaning Grovyle is only able to inflict minimal damage as it bounces away and awaits the start of the next salvo. From her platform, Katie eyes Ash curiously, commenting that his battling style is entirely illogical. He should know that nothing his Grovyle can do will defeat her Scizor, yet still he persists. Why? Grinning, Ash answers that stuff like logic doesn't matter to him, since he battles with his gut and his heart. This elicits a titter from the Cool Beauty, who says that in that case, let this be a test of their ideology, and may the best trainer win. again. Nodding, Ash says it's a deal. Then with a confident grin, he has Grovyle use Leaf Blade again. Unsurprisingly, this is wholly ineffectual, just as the next one, and the one after that. However, what is effective are the blows Katie's Scizor manages to get in on Grovyle, striking with its Metal Claw at the moment Grovyle hits it, having figured that these are the moments when Grovyle can't retreat, and that based on damage outputs, the grass type will fall first if it keeps this up. As a result, Grovyle soon finds itself battered and panting as it lands atop a rock, having just endured another beating from Scizor. In spite of this, the wood gecko doesn't look discouraged. If anything, when it looks back to Ash, it grins, with the boy acknowledging that it's done great before telling it to end things. Furrowing her brow, Katie asks how Grovyle is meant to end things when it's barely done any damage, but still smiling, Ash explains that even if the damage hasn't been very effective, it's all been dealt to the same place, meaning sooner or later it'll add up. He then tells Grovyle to use one last Leaf Blade, and as the grass star strikes this time, Katie is stunned to witness Scizor's armor crumple as it is launched off its feet. Landing hard due to its heavy metal body, Scizor creates a cloud of dust with its impact, though it comes as little surprise that when the dust settles, Scizor is unconscious. However, this is not the only upset of the match, as when Katie recalls her partner, Grovyle begins to glow, growing in size as it becomes a Sceptile. Cheering excitedly, Ash congratulates Sceptile on its evolution, with the forest Pokemon nodding coolly as it places a new twig in its mouth. Recognizing the fully evolved starter as a threat, Katie decides to go for a surefire win, calling out her Mischievous, which floats onto the field with a playful smile. Remembering this thing's strength, Ash tells Sceptile to hold nothing back, and nodding its understanding, Sceptile lunges forward with glowing leaf blades on both arms. Due to Sceptile's incredible speed, Mischievous is unable to avoid the hit, though it seems Katie does not want it to, as when the grass type gets close, she gives a simple order: Destiny Bond. From the stands, Brock groans, knowing exactly what Katie is planning, though unfortunately, Ash remains oblivious, and so continues with the attack, having Sceptile strike Mischievous and knock it out in one blow. Grinning, Ash calls Sceptile incredible, though his smile fades a moment later when Katie's trap springs, with two spectral eyes flying at Sceptile and knocking it out upon contact. As a result, this round is declared a double knockout, with Ash and Katie each having to bring out new Pokemon. Here Katie chooses to return her Venomoth to the field, while Ash goes with Skarmory, trusting the steely Predator to net him a win. As both Pokemon are flyers, the first section of this match is an aerial duel, with the duo clashing in mid-air. However, such a format clearly favours the more physically inclined Skarmory, and so Katie has Venomoth use Disable to bring an end to Skarmory's peck. Nonetheless, this is not the Armor Bird's only trick, with it quickly retaliating by swatting the poison moth Pokemon over the head with one of its steel wings, sending it crashing into the rock of the field. Knowing this could be a problem, Katie has Venomoth return to the air, where Skarmory predictably flies at it again, hoping to end things in its favour. However, this is exactly what Katie wants, as she has her Venomoth use Supersonic. Letting out a screech, Venomoth quickly renders the Armor Bird confused, with ignoring the poison bug, in favour of slamming its head into each of the rocks that line the field. Worriedly, Ash asks his friend what's wrong, though in its disoriented state, Skarmory doesn't hear him, allowing Venomoth to start charging up its finishing move, Hyper Beam. Crying out once more, Ash pleads with Skarmory to snap out of it, and though the power of friendship is enough to reach the steely Sentinel, freeing it from confusion at the last moment, it cannot save it from what follows, as a fearsome Hyper Beam lights up the field, before flattening the remaining rocks and rendering Skarmory unable to battle. As Ash has now lost 3 Pokemon, it is time for the field terrain to change, with it now becoming a water field. Nonetheless, Katie keeps her Venomoth in, while Ash looks to Pikachu, asking if he's ready to battle. Flashing his cheeks in the affirmative, Pikachu leaps onto one of the floating platforms dotting the pool, signaling the commencement of the match. Wasting no time, the Electric Mouse goes all out with a Thunderbolt, and stunned by the incredible speed and strength of this attack, Venomoth is unable to avoid it, being struck head-on and sent splashing into the water. Unfortunately for Katie, this poses 2 very real problems for Venomoth. First, that with its wings all wet, it can't get airborne again, and second, that water is incredibly conductive, something Pikachu is quick to capitalize on, electrifying the pool and causing the moth to go belly up. Now all tied up in terms of remaining Pokemon, Katie brings out her next partner, the astutely chosen Dugtrio. However, upon seeing it, Ash is confused, wondering how a ground type that relies on burrowing will be able to do anything on a water field. This is a question Katie is happy to answer, having Dugtrio use Earthquake, with the resulting seismic force sending massive tidal waves throughout the pool, similar to how Whiscash uses that move. Though he tries to avoid them by leaping from platform to platform, one of these does manage to strike Pikachu, buffeting him and forcing him to take an unplanned dip. Once he's in the water, getting out is even harder, as each time he attempts to pull himself onto a platform, a new wave just washes him away again. As a result, it falls to Ash to come up with a solution, and so looking around, he realizes the waves are timed, meaning if Pikachu waits until just after the wave passes over his platform, he should be able to get back on. However, to do so means going underwater and waiting for just the right moment, a task made all the more difficult by the fact that Pikachu won't be able to hear Ash, meaning he can't help his best friend this time. Nonetheless, Ash believes in Pikachu, and so tells him to try it, with the mouse diving deep and holding his breath. A moment later, Pikachu feels the ripple of a wave passing over him, and so springs into action, using his tail like a fin and bursting out onto a platform. Now that they are back on even footing, the question becomes how to actually damage Dugtrio, as long-range Thunderbolts won't work, meaning they need to get close. This means quick attack, and so Ash and his buddy leap from platform to platform, building up speed before going in for the hit. However, here too Katie has a counter, having Dugtrio change up the rhythm of its earthquakes to create a wave just as Pikachu is approaching, causing the mouse to be hit at full force and sent slamming back into a platform. Stoically, Katie explains that her Dugtrio has created both a perfect offense and defense, so Ash would be wise to surrender so his Pikachu does not suffer. Undeterred, Ash replies that actually, he thinks he's just figured out how he's going to beat this unbeatable defense, before asking Pikachu if he remembers Victor and Puka from Seafoam Island. Immediately catching on to what Ash is thinking, Pikachu grins, adopting a surfer's stance, so that when the next wave comes, he is able to steer his platform, causing it to be carried by the wave rather than buffeted by it. Picking up speed, Pikachu begins surfing around the pool, using the earthquake waves to go faster and faster. Soon he has enough momentum to move without Dugtrio's assistance, and so surges towards the ground type, passing over the wave Katie has her Pokemon to create to defend itself and catching some air. For a moment, no one speaks, awed by the sheer audacity of this play. Then with a cheer, Ash as his surfing Pikachu use the back of its improvised board to spray Dugtrio with a super effective blast of water from its own attack. Then to add insult to injury, Pikachu lands atop Dugtrio, sandwiching it between two platforms and knocking it out. To the shock of everyone, Ash now finds himself in the lead, and as Katie reveals her 6th Pokemon, that being Walrein, the young Cantonian feels confident that he can win this. However, as the old saying goes, pride cometh before the fall, and such is the case with Pikachu, as when Ash has his partner use Thunderbolt, Walrein matches it with Ice Beam, freezing the electricity and then the mouse himself. In such a state, Pikachu is helpless, and so when the Water Ice type uses Body Slam, Pikachu finds himself pancaked and unable to battle. Hopping onto the platform and pulling Pikachu inside his vest so the mouse can warm up, Ash thanks his starter for his help. Then with a smile, he reveals his penultimate Pokemon, with that being Whiscash. Warbling as it belly flops into the pool, Whiscash eyes its opponent, recognizing it as a fellow bulky water type. As a result, when Ash gives the go-ahead, it uses Double Edge, wanting to test the Ice Break Pokemon's fortitude. To its credit, Walrein is able to endure this, then with a bark slams into Whiscash with Body Slam, accepting the challenge. Here too Whiscash passes, with the pair quickly devolving into a back and forth, where they attempt to push the other off the platform and claim supremacy. However, this bout unfortunately never gets an end, as under the force of these constant attacks, along with the weight of the two Pokemon, the platform gives out long before the combatants, crumbling into nothing and sending them both crashing into the water. Here Whiscash attempts to gain the upper hand with its Earthquake strategy, though by employing Mimic, Katie is able to have Walrein copy the move and create corresponding vibrations that cancel Whiscash's out. Recognizing this is a bust, Ash next has Whiscash use Water Gun, though this too proves fruitless, when Walrein is revealed to already know the move, with the two jets clashing in midair. Due to the two Pokemon being so even in strength, neither Water Gun can surpass the other, with Ash and Katie both calling a halt to this attack, as they weigh their options. After a moment of thought, the two trainers realize there's really only one way to settle this, and that's the way Whiscash and Walrein had wanted all along. One last physical clash. Calling out to their Pokemon, the pair of trainers command their water types to use Double Edge and Body Slam again, and to hold nothing back. Letting out their fiercest cries, Walrein and Whiscash throw themselves at their opponent for a final time, though when they skid past each other, it is clear that one of them is not okay. That being Whiscash, who has at last succumbed to the cost of its multiple Double Edges, coming to a stop at the edge of the pool with spirals for eyes. Recalling the Whiskers Pokemon, Ash reveals his final choice, Armaldo, who wastes no time discharging an ancient power. At once, a series of fossils bombard Walrein from above, and with its weakness to rock types, it is only a matter of time before this prehistoric pummeling takes it down too. Now at last it is time for the final battle, Armaldo versus Golduck, with Katie feeling fairly confident, since while this water field is perfect for a Golduck, a bulky rock type like Armaldo is bound to struggle. However, here she is wrong, as with a grin, Ash tells Armaldo to hop into the water. Confused, Katie asks why Ash would do this, when water is known to hurt rock types. Though still confident, Ash explains that according to the scientists who revived Armaldo, its species used to be aquatic hunters back in the day, so it should be right at home in the pool. As soon as Ash says this, Armaldo springs into action, proving its trainer right, as it dives underwater and soars through the water at speeds could not hope to on land. Not wanting to let this thing near her Golduck, Katie calls for Hydro Pump, though here she learns that the platy wings at Armaldo's back are actually fins, with him helping it to maneuver as it easily dodges this, before shooting out of the water like a torpedo. Extending a glowing claw, Armaldo then strikes Golduck with a Fury Cutter before diving back into the water and zooming away. Several more times, Katie attempts to hit the plate Pokemon with super effective Hydro Pumps, and several more times it dodges. Its aquatic agility showing just how it became the top of its food chain so long ago. Then, just when it seems like Armaldo has given up on the attack, it returns, dashing in and leaping from the water right behind Golduck to rake the Blue Duck's back with its second Fury Cutter. Returning to the water once again, Armaldo then resumes its dodging, though this time the move it is trying to avoid is confusion, as Katie has wisely concluded that if she can freeze Armaldo in place, she can take it out with a water attack. However, to do so, Golduck must first get a lock on it, which is easier said than done with a creature who is traveling at top speeds through the water. Then, it happens. Armaldo makes the same sharp turn it did last time, and begins coming in for the attack. Thinking fast, Katie tells Golduck to start pivoting back and forth, so that it can face Armaldo when it emerges, and strike it with a point-blank Hydro Pump. While this is a good plan, it has one flaw, that being the assumption that Armaldo will appear either in front or behind the duck Pokemon, a flaw that is exposed a moment later, when Armaldo appears directly beneath Golduck, using Fury Cutter first to smash through the platform it was standing on, and then to ram its claw into Golduck's soft underbelly for a devastating uppercut. This move sends both Pokemon crashing down hard into the water, and as they both surface, Armaldo is fine, while Golduck is out cold, giving this match and the battle to Ash. Following this is Ash's top 16 battle, though surprisingly, it is not against Morrison, as in canon, Morrison only was made aware of registration by Ash at the last minute, meaning that without the boys having become friends, the orange-haired wanderer would not have been allowed to enter the competition, resulting in a change-up in the matches. Nonetheless, Ash is able to defeat his top 16 opponent with the help of Tauros, though this is not the only change, as because of the altered pairings, Ash is not matched up with Tyson in the top 8, nor is he in the top 4, with the two rivals instead meeting to battle in the finals, just as they had promised. Finally, the morning of Ash and Tyson's match arrives, with the two trainers making their way into Evergrande Stadium, both aware that one of them will walk away the winner of the Hoenn League. When they have taken their places, the two rivals give each other matching smiles, promising to make this a match neither of them will regret. Then, as a grass battlefield rises into view, they bring out their first Pokemon. Considering the terrain, it is hardly surprising both trainers have chosen grass types, with Ash going with Meganium, while Tyson opens with his Sceptile. Eyeing each other up, the two grass starters quickly conclude that the other is a worthy opponent, with Meganium even briefly thinking how that posturing idiot on her team who keeps trying to look cool could take some pointers from this Sceptile who actually is cool. However, all admiration aside, it is time to battle, and so taking the first move, Tyson has his Sceptile rush in while using Leaf Blade, with the Grass Kicker slashing at Meganium before leaping back when she attempts to snare it with Vine Whip. Recognizing this as Tyson's trademark hit-and-run strategy, Ash puts to use the counter he has cooked up, that being to give chase, and keep the Hoenn Grass starter on the back foot, quite literally in fact. This proves to be surprisingly effective, with Meganium driving Sceptile to the edge of the battlefield. Then when the Gecko has nowhere to go, she slams into it with all her might, knocking it off the raised battlefield, and causing it to make a rather painful landing. From the sideline, the ref begins the countdown from 10, warning Tyson that unless Sceptile gets back in the ring by this time, it will be judged to have fled the battle. Refusing to lose in this way, Sceptile gets back to its feet, then with a kick of its powerful legs, leaps back onto the field, ending the count and resuming the battle. Knowing that hit and run is out, Tyson next goes for Range Assault, telling Sceptile to use Solar Beam. However, to do so means a charge time, a fact which Ash and Meganium are quick to exploit, with the herb Pokemon firing off a volley of Petal Dances which strikes Sceptile for successively more damage. However, thanks to it not being very effective, Sceptile manages to endure until it is time to fire the Solar Beam, with the Sunny Ray being aimed directly at Meganium. Desperately, Ash calls for one last Petal Dance, and as the two attacks collide midair, they create an explosion which rocks the battlefield, and creates a plume of black smoke. Holding their breath, both Ash and Tyson look on, then as the smoke finally clears, they see that neither Meganium nor Sceptile is still standing. Recalling their vanquished friends, the two trainers then bring out their second Pokemon, Shiftry for Tyson and Snorlax for Ash. Like last time, Tyson goes first, having Shiftry launch a Mega Kick, which buries itself in Snorlax's corpulent tummy, before dashing into one of the patches of tall grass lining the field, to lie in wait. However, Snorlax makes no attempt at reprisal, instead Ash just asks if it's comfortable, with the normal type shooting its trainer a thumbs up. Seeing that Snorlax isn't going to fight back, Shiftry leaps from its hiding place, and this time delivers a flying Mega Kick across Snorlax's jaw before disappearing into another patch of grass. Grinning, Ash says he thought Tyson's strategy might be something like that, though like before he has a counter. He then tells Snorlax to do what it does best, best and eat the grass. In order, the glutton is happy to obey, rising to its feet and toddling over to the patch of grass Shiftry is hiding in. Grabbing handfuls of the grass, Snorlax begins to devour it, with Shiftry itself nearly becoming lunch as it has to dart out of the way of Snorlax's hands while fleeing to a new patch of grass. However, when Snorlax is done with this patch, it consumes that one too, as well as every other one, leaving the wicked Pokemon exposed. Seeing that Ash won't allow any skullduggery, Tyson and Shiftry go in for a head-on Mega Kick, though this is exactly what Ash wanted it to do, having Snorlax respond with an Ice Punch, which catches the flying foot and encases it in ice. Slowly the ice begins to spread, with Shiftry being helpless to avoid it, until finally it is coated head to toe in ice. Thankfully it is not trapped this way for long, as with a roar, Snorlax frees it with a second super effective Ice Punch, which shatters the casing, along with any hope Shiftry had of victory as it stumbles backwards and lies unconscious on the field. Playing smart, Tyson's third Pokemon is the fighting type Hariyama, with the sturdy fighting type seeming a perfect counter to Snorlax. Unsurprisingly at this point, Hariyama goes first, slamming a brick break into Snorlax's belly before following up with a series of 5 super effective arm thrusts. In response, Ash tries for another Ice Punch, but this barely does anything, with Tyson explaining that his Hariyama's ability is thick fat. He then has it repeat the process, getting 6 good hits in while Snorlax barely moves, though this time Tyson also has Hariyama use Focus Punch, with the arm thrust Pokemon charging up, then delivering a devastating blow to Snorlax. Following this salvo, Snorlax doesn't look so good, though neither does Hariyama, as after so much vigorous attacking it seems to be starting to fatigue. However, one of these issues is treatable, as when Tyson tells Hariyama to get in there with another arm thrust, Ash has Snorlax use rest, allowing it to recover all its health while it takes a nap. This puts Tyson on a timer, as Hariyama is now free to attack Snorlax without reprisal for a while, though the trade-off is that unless it can eliminate the sleeping Pokemon in this time, Snorlax will rise fresh as a daisy and eager to finish it off. Trusting in quantity, Tyson has Hariyama use repeated arm thrusts, hoping the sheer number of hits will knock Snorlax out. Unfortunately, each of these hits only adds to Hariyama's fatigue, with it soon starting to slow, calling into question the effectiveness of this strategy. Then to make matters worse, Snorlax awakens far earlier than Tyson had hoped, with a usually cuddly gourmand looking fierce as it bellows, seemingly demanding to know who disturbed its slumber. As Hariyama is the only one on the field, it is quickly deemed the culprit, which in turn earns it a retributionary hyper beam to the face that sends it flying as it cuts a deep trench in the battlefield. Between this and the fatigue of its own moves, Hariyama is not able to withstand this assault, and so when it comes to a stop in front of Tyson, it is with spirals for eyes. As this was Tyson's third lost Pokemon, the battlefield then begins to change, becoming icy as the second half of the battle is called to begin. Despite the field change, Ash decides to stick with Snorlax, while Tyson goes with Donphan for his fourth Pokemon. This proves a good decision, as the treads lining Donphan's body act like winter tires, allowing it to easily traverse the ice, while in contrast, Snorlax finds it rather difficult to move, constantly slipping and crashing into pillars of ice. Using this to its advantage, Donphan uses Rollout to knock Snorlax off its feet and send it bouncing around the field like a hockey puck. This greatly annoys the normal type, especially since it makes it even more vulnerable to follow-up rollouts, as Donphan repeatedly slams into it. Eventually, Snorlax does manage to come to a halt, and knowing this might be its only chance to recover, Ash calls for another rest. However, when Snorlax attempts to lie down in the cold hard ice battlefield, it cannot seem to get comfortable. Subsequently, it is unable to fall asleep and heal itself, meaning when Donphan hits it for the fifth and final rollout, Snorlax is knocked unconscious, toppling Ash's seemingly impenetrable defensive wall. Ash's third Pokemon is not one Tyson expected, though all the same it does pique his curiosity, as when the Cantonian brings out his own Donphan, Tyson comments this should be a fun challenge for both their ground types. Grinning, Ash replies that he was just thinking the same thing. Then in unison, the pair of trainers call for rollout. At once the two armor Pokemon curl in on themselves and go hurtling towards the other, clashing and breaking apart with matching strength. This happens again on the second and third encounters, with the two Donphan bouncing off each other and being sent skidding in opposite directions before they can come around for another pass. As they do this, Tyson compliments Ash on how well he's raised his Donphan, stating that from the length of its tusks, it is still comparably quite young, so to be matching his older and more experienced ground type is a testament to his training and their bond. Smiling, Ash explains that he's had Donphan since it was an egg, and how they've been through a lot together, especially since coming to Hoenn. As Ash says this, his Donphan similarly reflects on their journey together, finding heart in this, so that when it and Tyson's Donphan clash again, Ash's ground type pushes that little extra bit harder, allowing it to break through the other Donphan's rotation and send it stumbling face first onto the ice. This leaves Tyson's Donphan vulnerable, and as Ash's Donphan executes a sharp turn, it uses its final rollout to strike the other's soft underbelly and send it soaring through several icy spires until it crashes to the ground, unconscious. Now it is time for Tyson's penultimate Pokemon, though instead of getting cocky, Ash raises his guard, since it's clear that Tyson has been saving at least one real heavy hitter for the back half, in the form of his Metagross. As Donphan comes to a stop and unfurls from its rollout, Ash tells it to use Earthquake, with the ensuing stomp sending cracks through the icy battlefield. This does serious damage to Metagross, who lets out a metallic shriek. Though not one to fall at the first hurdle, the Steel Psychic type quickly recomposes itself and retaliates with Psychic. Suddenly, Donphan finds itself being lifted off its feet by a blue psionic aura, then before it can do anything to resist, it is tossed around like a rag doll, slamming repeatedly into the field before being flung back to land at Ash's feet where it lies unconscious. Next up for Ash is Totodile, with the croc making its usual happy entrance dance, while Ash asks if it's ready to win. Curving its snout-like mouth into a grin, Totodile nods, then on its trainer's command, lunges at Metagross and uses Bite. Due to Metagross's thick steely hide, Tyson doesn't think much of this, figuring Totodile's little jaw won't be able to pierce it, though here he is proved wrong when the water type buries its fangs into Metagross with enough force to make the iron-legged Pokemon holler, just as Donphan did. Using Psychic, Metagross then attempts to toss Totodile away, though to its shock and horror, it finds the bitey croc difficult to dislodge, as now that it has found something hard to sink its teeth into, it doesn't want to let go. And so the fight quickly devolves into a farcical tug of war, with Metagross trying to pull, wiggle, and even twist Totodile off its leg, while with equal vigor Totodile holds on while also delivering several more painful chomps to the Steel Psychic type. However, eventually Metagross does win, waiting for a moment when Totodile opens its jaws to bite down again, at which point it uses all its telekinetic power to blast the water type into the ice. Landing hard, it looks as though this might be the end for Totodile, only for it to hop back up and start dancing in a way that can only be interpreted as, "That was fun, let's do it again." Sweat dropping, Metagross then comes in for a Meteor Mash, hoping that this time when it knocks the big jaw Pokemon down, it won't get back up. However, this just gives Totodile something new to chew on, with it meeting the strike with another bite that leaves teeth marks in Metagross's foot, even as it stomps Totodile into the ground. Unfortunately, these teeth marks will have to act as Totodile's parting gift, as despite its spunky nature, it cannot withstand a half-ton of metal being dropped on its head, meaning that when Metagross lifts its leg, it is to reveal a pancaked and unconscious Totodile. Now the two competitors are all tied up in terms of Pokemon, with Ash bringing out his second last pick, who happens to be a shiny Noctowl. As it perches itself on one of the crushed ice pillars from Snorlax's unplanned trip around the field, Tyson comments that he's never seen a Pokemon with that coloration before, a claim which makes Ash laugh that yeah, his old friend's one of a kind, and not just because of its color. He then attempts to demonstrate this by uttering Hypnosis, with the Psychic Rays quickly putting Metagross to sleep. This leaves the Iron-Leg Pokemon exposed to the volley of pecks that follow, though due to its typing, these aren't very effective. Having watched Ash's battle with Katie, Tyson is aware of what Ash is trying to do, and warns him that it won't work, adding that Metagross is a light sleeper. As if on cue, Metagross's eyes spring open, and bringing one of its girdle-like legs up, Metagross swats Noctowl out of the air, sending the owl Pokemon groundward with a squawk. However, Ash's flower is far too resilient to go down like this, and so executes an aerial maneuver to catch itself in midair before swooping back in for another attack. Unfortunately, this leaves it exposed to Metagross's follow-up, with a Steel Psychic type firing off a point-blank Hyper Beam, which sends Noctowl flying up rather than down this time, as it is flung so far into the air that for a moment Ash loses sight of it. As a result of using Hyper Beam, Metagross now requires a moment to rest, though this does little good for Ash, as with Noctowl out of sight, there is no way he can capitalize on this moment of weakness. Then, the boy sees something, Noctowl falling to earth. Worriedly, he cries out to it, assuming it's unconscious and about to crash, but then he realizes it's not falling, it's flying, with a new look of determination on its face, as it is cloaked in harsh light. In its drive to not let Ash down, Noctowl has learned Sky Attack, and as it zeroes in on Metagross, there is nothing the metal monstrosity can do but take the hit. In the aftermath of such a ferocious attack, Metagross is knocked out cold, though as Noctowl flaps dazedly to the ground, it knows that this was a team victory. Up last for Tyson is none other than his faithful Meowth. And from the look on its face as it eyes up Noctowl, everyone can tell the Scratch Cat thinks it's just stumbled upon its breakfast. However, this feisty fowl has no intention of being easy prey, and so on Ash's command, opens with a Confusion. This strikes Meowth hard, though similarly tenacious, the normal type does not fall here, rising to its feet and retaliating with a super effective Thunderbolt that ruffles the owl Pokemon's feathers something fierce. The two predatory Pokemon then lock eyes, and as one, repeat their last attacks, putting all their power into this clash of wills. Blue light meets jagged electricity in the middle of the stage, and for a moment, it is anyone's guess who will prevail. Then, with a crackle, the Thunderbolt breaks through, as the already battle-damaged Noctowl is not able to contend with its fresh foe, taking the full brunt of the super effective attack and dropping to the ground unconscious. Now at last it is time for the end game, as Ash looks to Pikachu. He had always known that he would save his starter for the final round, since if he's going to become a champion, he's going to do it with his best friend, or not at all. Sharing this conviction, Pikachu leaps onto the field, and when the call is given to begin, dashes at Meowth with Quick Attack. Having never contended with an opponent as speedy as Pikachu, Tyson and Meowth are caught off guard by this, with the electric rodent burying its head in the Scratch Cat's stomach. However, this comes at a cost, as refusing to lose the momentum from the last fight, Tyson has Meowth strike back with Iron Tail, which catches Pikachu onto the chin and sends him bouncing back across the hard icy field. Getting back to his feet, Pikachu next tries a ranged attack, firing off a Thunderbolt, which Meowth intercepts with one of its own, dissipating both. Now it is the Meowth in Boots' turn to go on the attack, with it extending its claws and lunging at Pikachu, who is forced to retreat in order to avoid being sliced to ribbons. However, just because the first attack failed doesn't mean Tyson's going to stop, having Meowth drive Pikachu to the edge of the field, clearly having picked up the trick from the start of the match. Here though, Ash's unconventional thinking comes to the rescue, as if he can't go forward and doesn't want to go back and down, that only leaves one choice: up. Flashing Pikachu a grin, the boy tells him to jump over Meowth, with the rat being happy to do so, flattening the cat's rakish hat as he makes his first leap onto its head before using that to springboard away. However, Tyson then shows off his own contingency plan, having Meowth use Thunderbolt again, while this time it is Pikachu has to fire off the counter shock to neutralize it. Landing in the center of the field, the electric rodent then readies a quick attack, though this time Tyson is ready, calling for a double team to disorientate Pikachu, providing the real Meowth strike from behind with Slash. Letting out a squeal of pain, Pikachu falls forward, and where he does not get up, the referee prepares to raise his flag, calling the match and the league for Tyson. But then, at the last second, Pikachu's eyes spring open, showing the fight isn't over yet. Whooping with delight, Ash tells his best friend that he knew he could count on him, with the electric type squeaking in confirmation as he gets back to his feet, though from the looks of things, if Pikachu goes down again, he won't be getting back up. As a result, this becomes Tyson and Meowth's sole objective, with the brown-haired boy ordering his Scratch Cat to rush in with a volley of slashes. Unfortunately for the challenger from Morville City, Pikachu and Ash aren't about to let them claim an easy victory, with Pikachu's agility allowing him to dodge then come back in for a quick attack each time Meowth tries to strike him. Smiling, Tyson acknowledges that it seems he's taught Ash a little something too, with a pair of rivals agreeing that not only have they both helped each other to grow, but they've also pushed each other to their very limits. They then agree on something else, that it's time to see the full extent of those limits in one last all-out clash. In unison, the two trainers then call their Pokemon back to their sides, as they command them to use one last Thunderbolt, and to hold nothing back. Nodding, Meowth and Pikachu then open fire, the power of their electrical attacks casting light on the entire stadium. Meeting in the middle, the two moves spark and hiss, though unlike the previous two attempts, neither Pokemon is fighting defensively now, meaning no fizzling out, with the only acceptable outcome being victory. On the field, the ice around the two combatants begins to crack and shatter from the sheer force of their attacks, though even still, they continue to brace themselves, putting everything they have into their Thunderbolts. It seems as though this clash could last forever, though obviously it does not, and when it ends swiftly, with the cause being not any fault or mistake, merely one Pokemon's strength giving out first. When this happens, that Pokemon finds themselves struck by lightning, the force of both attacks surging back into them and rendering them unconscious. A moment later, the referee raises his flag, signaling the end of the Evergrande Conference, and as the crowd rise to their feet to give a standing ovation, they herald the birth of their new champion, Ash Ketchum. A few hours later, Ash is presented with his trophy by Mr. Goodshow, as well as invited to challenge Hoenn's Champion League for a chance to earn a position in their Elite Four, or possibly even become the regional champion. Naturally, Ash accepts, and so it is that his first match is scheduled for 3 days' time against the Dark Specialist Sydney. Over the next few days, Ash alternates between training for his upcoming battle and celebrating with his Pokemon. During this time, he also receives many congratulations from his friends and family, with Brock being the first, clasping Ash's hand and telling him how proud he is of his old friend, and how far he's come from the beginner who stumbled into his gym asking for a battle so long ago. Misty, Delia, Tracy, and even Gary also call to congratulate the new champ, though the most illuminating call of all comes from Professor Oak the night before Ash's match with Sydney. While he does of course want to give Ash praise for his accomplishment, he also has news, having followed up on Noctow's mysterious day trips as promised. Through this, he has uncovered something he thinks Ash will want to know, which may also be useful in tomorrow's battle. The next morning dawns bright and early, though this is no problem for Ash, who could not sleep a wink all night. As the sun rises, our young hero watches it from the battlefield of Evergrande Stadium, hardly able to believe he's made it this far. However, here his reverie is interrupted by an unfamiliar voice, and looking around, Ash sees a man with a tuft of maroon hair. Grinning devilishly, the man introduces himself as Sydney, Ash's opponent, before adding that he knows what Ash is feeling, since that was him last year when he won the league. He then asks if Ash is ready for their battle today, to which the young Cantonian beams that he always is, a response that pleases Sydney, as he promises to see him in a few hours for a match he'll never forget. As promised, a few hours later, Ash and Sydney find themselves facing each other from across the battlefield, while all around them, the packed stadium buzzes with excitement. From the sideline, the referee explains this will be a 5v5 battle, then with a flick of his flags, encourages the trainers to begin. In contrast to his previous matches, Ash chooses to start this one off with Pikachu, with the electric rodent leaping eagerly from his shoulder. Meanwhile, Sydney chooses his Mightyena, and with no hesitation goes on the attack, ordering a sand attack to blind Pikachu, followed directly by a crunch when he's vulnerable. Letting out a scream of pain, Pikachu tries to retreat when Mightyena releases him from its jaws, though this is of little use, as the bite Pokemon is already hot on his trail, slamming into him with Double Edge, then crunching once more. Though the battle has barely begun, Pikachu already seems to be on the verge of fainting, and so needing a miracle, Ash calls for a Thunderbolt. Marshalling all his strength, Pikachu blasts the wolf, causing it to howl in pain and inflicting serious damage, though even here Sydney is not stationary, ordering another Double Edge, which Mightyena dutifully performs, charging in despite its wounds and slamming into Pikachu with enough force to send him sprawling backwards, where he lies unconscious. As Ash retrieves his buddy, Sydney grins that he likes this kid's spunk, since it reminds him of himself, but he can't keep battling at his old level, since this is a whole new league he's in. Nodding, Ash thanks Sydney for the tip, then brings out his second pick, Bulbasaur. After so long at the lab, the little grass starter is raring to go, firing off a volley of razor leaves before the dark specialist can even call for an attack. Following this, it uses Vine Whip, striking Mightyena and knocking off its feet with a squeal. Grinning, Sydney says that's what he's talking about, adding that his philosophy is to never stop attacking, since there can't be any holes in your defense if you don't bother with one. He then orders a crunch, though as the bite Pokemon lunges at Bulbasaur, the grass poison type shows off its own speed, jumping out of the way and firing a seed from its bulb which lands on Mightyena's fur, then sprouts into a series of vines which bind the wolf. Suddenly, the vines then glow red, eliciting pained howls from Mightyena as Bulbasaur feels its own energy being refreshed, though now is not the time to rest on their laurels, as Sydney is already telling the dark type to bite its way to freedom. Knowing they don't have much time, Ash calls for a solar beam, and drawing in the light of the early morning sun, Bulbasaur begins to charge. Then, when it feels it has enough power, Bulbasaur fires its most powerful attack, catching the constricted Mightyena in the blast, and evening the score at one defeated Pokemon each. Next up for Sydney is his Shiftry, and figuring this one will fight very differently from Tyson's, Ash tries his luck with another Leech Seed, hoping to bind it and maybe take it out with another Solar Beam. However, this is pushing the envelope just a bit too much, as when Bulbasaur fires the seed, Shiftry deflects it by clapping its fan-like hands and creating a shockwave that blows Bulbasaur back. Then, when he sees the grass poison type is off balance, Sydney calls for an extra sensory, causing Shiftry to blast Bulbasaur with a series of psychic rings, which deal super effective damage and cause the seed Pokemon to slump forward. However, being one of Ash's gutsiest Pokemon, Bulbasaur refuses to let this stop it, rising to its feet and firing off a couple of Razor Leaves which strike Shiftry. Unfortunately, this is all Bulbasaur can do, as when a moment later the second extra sensory hits, Bulbasaur is taken out. Third up for Ash is his Charizard, a choice which makes Sydney smile, as he says Drake told him about that one, claiming it has a heart of a champion, a fact which he wants to put to the test. Unluckily for him, to test Charizard, he would first have to hit it, something the fire type does not allow, as by unleashing a powerful overheat, it is able to bring down Shiftry in one hit. Being a clever man, Sydney next chooses Crawdont, though is disappointed when Ash recalls Charizard, yelling that he thought Ash was cool, but running away like a punk most certainly is not. Grimacing, Ash apologizes, saying that after his and Charizard's last experience tempting fate with water, he'd rather not run the risk again, before introducing his penultimate Pokemon, with that being his Squirtle, who is on sabbatical from leading the Squirtle squad. Putting two and two together, Sydney comments that Ash is using a lot of Pokemon from his home region, to which Ash replies that this is an intentional choice, since with this being a whole new beginning in his journey, he wants to go back to basics, using only Pokemon from his original team. Nodding, Sydney acknowledges that he can see Ash's thinking here, though he hopes that means Ash's old buddies are also his strongest, because he's going to come in with everything he's got. Grinning, Ash replies that he and his team will be ready. Then with that, the battle resumes, as the two water types then charge each other, with Squirtle's Skull Bash colliding with strength from Crawdont. Breaking apart, the pair then engage in a water type clash, with Squirtle using Hydro Pump, only for Crawdont to convert this into the water it needs for a surf, which it sends directly back at Squirtle. However, the tiny turtle Pokemon is not out of tricks yet, as by using Rapid Spin, he is able to cut through the wave and slam once more into Crawdont, sending them both tumbling to the ground. Landing hard, the pair then use this chance to inflict a little more damage on each other, with Crawdont smacking Squirtle with Facade, while Squirtle in turn uses Skull Bash again. This at last forces them apart, and as the two water types both stagger to their feet, they decide to risk it all on one last water attack. For Squirtle, this is Hydro Pump, while Crawdont goes with Water Pulse, with the two moves meeting in the middle. Then, with the force of an undersea explosion, they detonate, bathing the two water types in the deluge and causing them both to wash up at their trainer's feet, where they lie unconscious. Now it is time for Ash to reveal his 5th and final Pokemon, and it is none other than the one Oak had been telling him about the night before, Pidgeot. As it turns out, Noctowl had been venturing out to visit Pidgeot, having heard of it from some of Ash's Kanto team members and so had been training under it since returning from Johto. Having discovered this, Oak had gone into the forest with Pidgeot's old ball which Ash had left with him, and upon reuniting with the bird, had asked if it would help Ash out for an upcoming battle where he would need its strength. Eager to prove itself to its trainer, Pidgeot wastes no time executing a wing attack when Sydney reveals his penultimate Pokemon to be Cacturne. This strikes the Scarecrow Pokemon hard, causing it to stumble back. Though being a vengeful creature, it quickly extracts its payback, using Feint Attack to drive its spiked arm into Pidgeot's underbelly. Nonetheless, Pidgeot still comes back for another pass, and this time its wing attack is enough to knock Cacturne off its feet. However, once again, Cacturne makes sure to give as good as it gets, blowing a puff of cotton spores into Pidgeot's face as it goes. This leaves the bird off kilter, and worse, with the extra drag of the cotton now lacing its feathers, Pidgeot's movements have been slowed. This gives Cacturne just the time it needs to get back to its feet, and as Pidgeot comes around to attack again, it is now slow enough that the grass type can dodge it, leaping onto Pidgeot's back and hammering away at it with needle arms. Despite not being very effective moves, such a barrage is bound to do damage eventually, with Pidgeot squawking as it tries and fails to dislodge this unwelcome passenger. Finally, when it becomes clear that it can't get rid of Cacturne this way, Ash calls for Pidgeot to fly directly up at max speeds, something the bird Pokemon is more than happy to do, shooting upwards at twice the speed of sound. As a result, by the time the flapping of its wings are heard, Pidgeot is already high into the sky. Then when Ash believes it has gone far enough, he commands Pidgeot to dive. To Cacturne's credit, it has managed to hang on during this whole time, though as its ride suddenly plunges downward, the Scarecrow Pokemon finds itself struggling to keep its grip. This is exactly what Ash had wanted, as at the very last second, he tells Pidgeot to spin, with this added motion finally dislodging the thorny weed and sending it slamming into the ground at a speed greater than Mach 2. Understandably, this is too much for Cacturne to endure, its eyes now being spirals, though as Pidgeot swoops down to let out a triumphant caw, its cry instead becomes a screech of pain, as vines rope their way around it, courtesy of Cacturne's parting gift. At once, Pidgeot is forced to make a crash landing, having been rendered flightless by the surprise leech seed, though this is not the worst of it, as Sydney reveals the Pokemon he calls his undisputed ace, Absol. Landing gracefully, Absol surveys its prey dispassionately, a sharp contrast to Sydney's excitable battling style, though all the same, it is clear that these two are a perfect pair, as when the Dark-type specialist calls for a rock slide, Absol obeys without question, assailing Pidgeot with super effective rocks and knocking it out. Recalling the bird with his thanks, Ash is now forced to return Charizard to the field, much to Sydney's pleasure, as he says this is how a battle ought to be. Mano a mano, the strongest guy from each side duking it out in a no-hold-bars winner-take-all slugfest. Grinning, Ash replies that he'll do all in his power to give Sydney that fight, a sentiment Charizard echoes as it lets out a bellow, then takes to the air. Knowing about Charizard's overwhelming rock weakness, Sydney attempts to capitalize on it by opening with a rock slide, but knowing how dangerous Elite 4 caliber rock moves can be, Ash has Charizard use Flamethrower, reducing the stones to lava. However, even this takes a bit more effort than it should have, with Ash reflecting on how all his fire moves will be a bit weaker now thanks to the overheat Charizard used to beat Shiftry. No matter, since even with this handicap, they'll still come out on top. Wanting to show their fiery spirit, Ash next has Charizard use Overheat, though as the orange orb flies at Absol, the Calamitous Canine simply chooses to endure the hit, instead using this time to perform a swords dance. As a result, Absol's fur is singed, but it is still able to fight, something Ash can respect, as he next calls for a Dragon Rage, with Charizard raining down bolts of draconic energy onto the Dark type. Once again, Absol chooses not to evade, instead using Swords Dance for a second time, its movements now spotlighted by the glow of prismatic orbs as they strike and burst. A little confused now, Ash asks Sydney why he isn't fighting back, reminding him of what he said about a no-holds-barred brawl. However, here the Elite Four member smiles deviously, as he replies that he absolutely will give Ash exactly that, though to do so, he had to make sure Absol was in top shape, which it now is. He then tells Absol to use Aerial Ace, and at once the disaster Pokemon springs into action, using the unerring quality of this move to spring into the air where it deftly slashes Charizard across the chest with its head blade, before spinning in midair to face its back. Suddenly, Ash realizes this was all Sydney's plan from the start, and so cries out for Charizard to turn around and face Absol, but it's already too late, as Absol has begun hurling the rocks for its rock slide. Knowing they can't dodge at this close range, Ash calls for the only move that might be strong enough to melt the rocks, Overheat. Though as the orange orbs collide with the rocks, it is plain to see that Charizard has already lost too much firepower, with the stones tearing the fire move to pieces, then striking Charizard head on. Against such a cataclysmic force, Charizard finds itself unable to remain in the air, hitting the ground with a heavy thump and leaving a crater in its wake. Desperately, Ash cries for Charizard to get up, but unfortunately the fire type is down. And when the count reaches 10, Charizard is declared unable to battle, meaning Ash will not be advancing any further into the Champion League. As Ash recalls Charizard, he hangs his head, unable to believe that he fell at the first hurdle, though as Sydney approaches the boy, he tells him not to take it too hard, since that was a really close match, and had Charizard's overheat been able to break through Rock Slide, he's certain he and Absol would have lost. This does cheer Ash up a bit, with him thanking the Elite Four member, though with a gruff grin, Sydney says the best way he can thank him is to keep training, so that someday when he's an Elite Four member, they can have a rematch. Smiling now at the thought, Ash promises to do just that, with the pair shaking hands and parting on good terms. By evening it seems that Ash is entirely back to his cheerful old self, eating heartily with Pikachu and all his Pokemon by his side, claiming that after a good battle, they all deserve a good meal. Laughing fondly that some things never change, Brock asks Ash if he knows what he wants to do next, though here Ash admits he isn't sure yet, saying the only thing he knows is that he wants to get stronger and go on more adventures. Nodding, Brock grins that he had a feeling Ash would say something like that, before asking if he's planning to go back to Pallet Town then. With a smile, Ash says that he is, and so it comes to pass that the next morning when a plane leaves Evergrande Airport for the Kanto region, Ash, Brock and Pikachu are on it, eager to see what the next great adventure will be. And that's where we'll leave things. What further adventures await our heroes in Kanto? How will this league win affect Ash's future journeys? And will Ash ever earn a spot among the elite like Sydney suggested? Find out as the journey continues.